From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Ticats This Week with RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker.
Great to have you with us for another edition of Ticats This Week. Tiger Cats are 2-6 on the season, trying to improve that with their second game against Toronto coming up on Friday at 7:30. I'm RJ Broadhead. Along with Luke Tasker, we'll have the call for you on the Ticats Audio Network. And Luke, hello, adversity, our old friend. And we'll say friend because you don't it's an enemy, but it's one thing after another here for the Tiger Cats. Some struggles on the field, and now their starting quarterback, Dane Evans, won't play, won't dress. Tell us your thoughts when you heard the news that Dane was not going to play.
Well, it's almost like, what's next, for the Ticats. What else are they going to deal with? And, the quarterback production in general was already in question. And now, it's set in stone. You're going to have a whole different thing out there. So, Matt Schultz, we said from the beginning of the season, as far as backups go, he's a great guy to have at number 2, and he's had to be out there at times, and they've put him out there willingly at times, and he's done some good things this year. So it's not like you have an untested young guy who hasn't seen the field this year, and he already has some relationship built with the rest of the guys in his offense. And boy, very interesting, though, that at this point in the season, what the Ticats will have to deal with going into this second Toronto game.
And it really emphasizes the fact getting everybody game reps, because if Dane had played the whole way and Matthew Schultz all of a sudden has to come in and he hasn't had a lot of game action, that would be difficult. So now that game action he has seen is so valuable, isn't it?
Absolutely. And he's a guy who's started games in the CFL, but you're right, this year, I mean, he's been involved in at least the second half of this early season here. And so, and he's gotten the ball so many ways. He catches passes, catches screens, runs it from the backfield, has thrown, of course, as well. And I think the Ticats can count it as a blessing that it's him that's there and that he's been a part of the offense so far.
Well, it's why he was brought in, too. A big signing for the Tiger Cats to have that security at backup quarterback. And I went back and looked to last season, Luke, and David Watford came in. And it seemed a little bit bleak because he didn't have a lot of CFL experience, but the Tiger Cats did a really simple game plan, did not throw a lot, under 150 yards passing in both the games. They won both games with David Watford at quarterback. A couple of things stood out to me. The defense had an interception for a touchdown in both of those games. So my question to you is, do you expect the offense to be simplified a little bit, maybe not as much as it was last season with David Watford in, but simplified a little bit with Matthew Schultz? And the two-part question is, does the defense have to carry the team as far as looking back to last year? If they didn't get those defensive touchdowns, maybe it would have been a different story.
So the first part of this and the game plan with Matt Schultz, I think, yes, you boil it down a little bit. It's not even that. It's not a matter of football intelligence or Matt's ability to handle the game plan. I think it just helps across the board. Like really, really simplify, really solidify everyone's understanding of their own roles. It's just not a time in the season at a turning point at the quarterback position. It's not a time in the season to dive deep into the higher level football concepts, offensively. Boil this thing down and give everybody a really clear goal. Interestingly, that Matt Schultz has been part of the sort of, I guess you'd say, the complicated side of the Ticats offense in the past week, right? Like the interesting, nuanced, tricky stuff. That's where Matt Schultz has come in. But I think now that it's not, you don't have the quarterback tandem, I think that it's a moment to boil things down, to get back to basics and give everybody a very clear assignment so that when they take the field on Friday night, it's not you can eliminate some of that mental burden, some of the adversity that you have of just understanding, boil it down and make it simple. That would be I think a good philosophy to go to in this game. Now, the second part of your question, yes to the defense. And I think they're going to have to, they're going to have to come out to play against Toronto at home for this week. That front four that has had a really productive last few weeks here, right? And that storyline has changed with, everyone was sort of saying, where are the sacks? We need to see more pressure. And they've gotten there recently. We got to see more of that. And, I think I would love to see a pretty aggressive game from that defensive secondary. Those guys led the league in pass breakups and interceptions, and I want to see, I would love to see that ball hawking nature from those guys back there that we've come to know and love, and we kind of need it. But in addition to them, it's the Ticats special teams, I think, that are really going to have to play a huge part in this game. And if the offense struggles to find rhythm or is, not able to put many points on the board, that special teams unit has to be a part of winning the field position battle, at least making Toronto's offense run long fields and giving that offense a good chance, on something of a shorter field each time, and winning that field position battle. So 3 phases couldn't be more important than a week like this.
Okay, so you mentioned special teams, so let's talk about that a little bit. The coverage has been really good. Brandon Banks was returning punts for the Argos and averaged about 5 yards every return. Kickoff returns, they weren't much better for the Argos, so that aspect looks to be okay, despite some injuries that they've had. But maybe some decisions, it really looked like throughout the game that the Argos were trying to block a punt, and they finally did get through and block that punt, turned into a touchdown. And the Lawrence Woods play, a lot of talk about that, where if he had given up the single instead of trying to run the ball out, maybe they wouldn't have had to give up the safety. And it's one of those things. At the time, if it works, great, we don't look back. But if it doesn't work, of course, we do check in with hindsight.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. And if the Ticats would have been able to secured that drive and driven the ball down 40 yards to their 40, then we would have said, well, they ate up that clock and they didn't give up the single and they got back to where they would have started the drive. That's great. But in hindsight, of course, that ball goes into the end zone. If you could have relinquished the single for 40 yards or 35 yards of field position, and it would have been really valuable there. And of course, you would have avoided the safety. Couple things though. It was a beautiful punt, like a really nice kick, and it wasn't necessarily deep. The Argonauts were back in their end enough where you say you weren't necessarily expecting that ball to give Lawrence Woods the option for that. So sometimes that can take you by surprise, and you'd like to be ready for that situation regardless. But you can see how maybe that wasn't the top of mind,
Yes.
Whether to give up the single or not. And like you said, RJ, our hindsight's 20/20. I mean, that even bringing the ball out of the end zone, the Ticat offense could have driven down and gotten into a comfortable punting situation, or at least to their 40 where they would have been. So it is what it is. But those decisions and those nuances are at times what can determine the outcome of the game. Blocked punt, huge, and you can see on that film, it's just a little bit of a confusion, a little twist by Toronto. And two of Hamilton's players go to the same direction and pick up, one of them's mistake, and we're not really privy to whose mistake that is, or who made that error. That's just the nature of being an outsider. But you can bet that's a chink in the armor. A blocked punt is a really really difficult thing for a special teams unit to swallow, and so I'm sure their prep this week is solidifying that and trying to get that net punt back in their favor. They've been on and off with that throughout the season. In general, they're near the bottom of the league for the net punt, but in Toronto specifically, they had a really difficult time flipping the field. You'd love to see Lawrence Woods pop a big one, right? I mean, it would just be it would be the game for it at Tim Hortons Field in this Toronto matchup. But something on that special teams net, all the units involved, punt return, kick return, and all the field goal units, they've all have to be a net positive for the Ticats this week. And if Toronto's able to win that unit, win those special teams matchups, it's even harder for an offense that's dealing with some adversity.
Looking back at the game, it really did seem like the Argos were trying to block a punt. And you think about it, it is a pretty good strategy. Michael Domagala, not a lot of experience punting in the CFL. Other teams didn't seem to have that pressure on Hamilton, but there were probably 3 or 4 that the Argos were really close to blocking before they finally did get that punt blocked. Can teams really focus on trying to get that pressure on the kicker? We hadn't seen it until the Argos, and that's obviously something the Tiger Cats have to be prepared for again on Friday.
You know what the unfortunate thing is you kind of can start getting a target on your back too for a team that's let up a blocked punt. And so, everybody's watching the film and they see where that went wrong and how that punt block scheme, prevailed over the protection. And you start getting a target sometimes. So they really have to make that solid in there. You know what, RJ? I don't think it's a terrible time to have just to have ready, have it in your holster, some fake punts here. If you got teams that are bringing the pressure every time, that is the opportunity where you can slip an up back out to the flat. Direct snap, all kinds of creative things that they can do, onside punt and all that. So, I would love to see, and you never know, the Ticats may have had 3 of them in their holster every game, but you only do that when the time is just right and when the call is. But it'd be interesting to see if that's one schematic response to a heavy punt rush is trying to catch them unbalanced and having too many men add into that rush. So, just an interesting point to keep our eye on for the broadcast.
Yes.
And you can be sure to mention that I'm a genius if they do run a fake punt.
I will do that. I got your back.
But yeah, 100%. And it's you mentioned Domagala, and he's been asked to do a lot of things this season. And in general, I tend to focus on the protection more than the punter. But the punter does have to take responsibility for having efficient footwork to get the punt off. To not overstride and come and move up too far in the pocket. That snapper punter operation has to be gold as well. So surely they're going to be doubling down on the preparation and the film work for that. And we'll see because they need it. They've got to have a great kicking team game.
And it seems going through the statistics, it again wasn't close. Tiger Cats, they had better rush yards, better passing yards, better net offense. The time of possession was Hamilton's most this season, over 34 minutes.
Oh, these Argonauts, man. They're statistically phenomenal.
They only had 14
anomalies.
First downs, the Argos. Like it was 2 different leagues, but the mistakes, it seems whenever the Tiger Cats 2 or 3 mistakes a game, and it always seems to be costly. Like they don't seem to get a break on those mistakes. The pick 6, the block punt for a touchdown, there's the 14 points right there. And the other turnover for the Tiger Cats was on downs, and that basically gave the Argos enough time to run out the clock and win the football game. And it was the first time all season that the Argos didn't have a turnover. So that turnover battle, despite the statistics skewed in favor of the Tiger Cats, the Argos took advantage of opportunities. And you don't want to make any mistakes if you're the Tiger Cats, but it really is odd that when they do, it turns into points against them, it seems, almost every time.
Yep, you're right. I mean, they have not. It takes a really great team to overcome turnovers and legitimate game-changing mistakes and come back and win. So that's just not been able. They haven't been able to do that. But a couple things to those statistics, RJ. Like the first quarter was way lopsided time of possession in favor of the Ticats. It's almost like it was an even game beyond the first quarter. And as they got in there, like you can talk about, and you're right, like first downs, it was crazy. But that just goes to show that the red zone efficiency for the Ticats is not there right now. Their touchdown percentage when they cross into scoring territory is not where they need it to be. And on the flip side of that, if a team can get a defensive and a special teams turnover in a game, defensive special teams touchdown in a game, well, that's you can't really overcome that. I mean, forget the first downs. If you don't have to, in those situations, you didn't have to gain any offensive yards or any first downs gained to score majors. So I mean, it's just it's hard to overcome that, and it goes back to what you brought up. It's complementary football. All three phases are going to have to be excellent.
3 touchdowns for the Argos in the game, 1 on offense, the defensive touchdown, the special teams touchdown. And I want
that is complementary football, by the way. A touchdown per all 3 phase, right?
Yeah, you'll win a lot of football games if you can do that, and the Argos did win. So here's where your football genius has to come in handy, because nobody else can figure this out, Luke. We talk about the Tiger Cats' fourth quarter. Again, Argos outscored them 18-3. Last 2 games they've been outscored 29-3. The numbers are just way off base, and I'm going to add to it a little bit. So Tiger Cats have problems finishing games. The Argos have been terrible in the first quarter. Haven't scored a touchdown in the first quarter this year. They have 10 points all combined this year. They've been shut out in the first quarter in 4 of their 7 games, including against Hamilton. So it's a bit of a mystery for the Argos that they start so slowly, and a mystery for the Tiger Cats why they can't finish. It's odd statistics. I know there probably isn't a great answer to it, but it's clearly going into this, Tiger Cats have to build a lead early, a really big lead.
Yeah, I suppose short of breaking the trends, they better just mount up that lead pretty early. It's been a hard question. You can tell players, coaches, the fourth quarter question has been difficult for them to answer, and there's a good reason for that, because it's kind of a floating figure. And I do like the way Coach O has said a couple times that each game's different for what has gone wrong in the fourth quarter. And so the answer isn't really set in stone, but for some reason, multiple things have continued to go wrong as the game progresses. So tough to nail down. And it's unfortunate because it's almost the way you tend to go with that answer is when it's not clearly turnovers, because that was the issue, but then they fixed that late fourth quarter issues. Is it defense, a lack of the defense to stop on the second down efficiency? Well, they've had games where they've done that good, and so you can kind of float around those things, but it kind of turns to like just being able to win, just being winners, figuring out and gutting your way to the finish line. And that's not really an answer that people love, and they don't want to think that, and it's not. And it may not be true either. I mean, the Ticats have a lot of guys, that are proven winners, guys who have won Grey Cups, guys who have won big games, and great football players. And so, there's that unknown in team sports. It's not like tennis where, well, that guy's quickness isn't good enough, to do the overhand, spike. So it's just not as easy to identify. And in the greatest team sport of all time, sometimes you gotta unstatistically, unscientifically find your way to the finish line.
Yeah, and it continues to be a story until that storyline changes, and that could all change on Friday, and I know the Tiger Cats hope it will. So it's Matt Schultz's team going into that Friday game, again, 7:30. We'll have it for you on the Ticats Audio Network. Tiger Cats trying to even the season series with the Argos. We all know this stretch of 4 games against the Argos over a 5-week span, very, very crucial. But the injury to Dane Evans, not the only massive injury. Braylon Addison, heartbreaking injury at BMO Field. He's not going to play. And I went through and I looked at the receivers that Matt Schultz will have, the starting receivers, Luke. And Stephen Dunbar was their leading receiver last 3 games, including 71 yards against Toronto. He has 5 touchdowns on the year. He didn't have any against Toronto, but hasn't gone back-to-back games without a touchdown. So he's due. Here's where the mystery starts a bit. Tim White, 1 reception for 6 yards against the Argos. The game before that, he had 2 receptions for 15 yards. But he was their leading receiver the previous 4 games before that. So all of a sudden, he's stopped being used. Keandre Smith will be a starter. He has 4 receptions this season. 3 came against Toronto. Lamar Durant, 2 receptions this season. David Ungerer, 4 receptions this season. So there seems to be not a wealth of experience at receiver for Matt Schultz. You'd expect from those numbers that Stephen Dunbar would be the large target. It's an opportunity for one of the Canadian receivers to take advantage of. But Tim White is the one I can't figure out how he just hasn't been involved in this offense recently.
Yeah, well, I bet it stops here. Like, he's going to have to be, and they're going to have to use him, and they're going to have to dial up plays that intend to get him free and in space and with the ball in his hand. I mean, it's got to be now, and with Braylon's productivity was even bigger than it looked on paper. Like he had catches at times where he needed to make the catch. He had an impact that went beyond just what you see on paper from him. And so him being out, it will be Tim White that's going to be called on, and just to make more plays. And the balls, I think we'll find it going to his direction a little bit more. Unbelievable speed, unbelievable ability to make plays, and it is sort of strange that the last 2 weeks have been quiet. We'll see how that goes, but Dunbar and Steve White, I mean, we'll see them get their catches, and now it'll be interesting to see just how Matt Shiltz looks as, first quarter to fourth quarter, quarterback. Like, the guy who's going to be in there running the show the whole time. Because just like we've talked about Dane dealing with that sort of shared time and the creative plays while they're both in there and, handling that. And we've talked about the good and the bad. We have Matt Shiltz has been dealing with the same thing, shared time, being on the sidelines, and now he's going to be able to get in there and drive after drive, first down after first down, kind of operate the game. And we'll see how that goes and what receivers maybe get used more or less because of that.
And Don Jackson was heavily involved, leading rusher, not a ton of rushing yards, 47, but 67 receiving yards, so 114 all-purpose yards, back-to-back games with a touchdown. Do you think Jackson 5 will be a heavy part of this offense too?
I love that. I do, and that was he did have an impact last week in Toronto, and I liked a couple of the ways that he finished runs with with getting a few extra yards and falling forward. He did a good job catching the ball out of the backfield. He was the Ticat Audio Network player of the game. I mean, he did. He had a really good impact on how the night went, and you hope, and it does for players. I mean, it really does. You give yourself confidence, and success and confidence grows with one player, not just a team too. So, you hope that he can be sort of a consistent week to week guy with that kind of productivity.
So some major changes on offense for the Tiger Cats. No Dane Evans, no Braylon Addison in comparison to the first game against the Argos. The defense, pretty good for Hamilton. The only change, Mason Bennett out. Malik Carney comes in as far as starters go. So that's good news for the defense. And the Argos really don't have a lot of changes. Eric Rogers, he's out, which means that Speedy B moves from the backup receiver to a starter. So that's pretty good replacement. He wasn't used a lot against the Tiger Cats, which was a bit of a surprise. So going into this game in Hamilton, you look at the momentum for the Argos, you look at the injuries for the Tiger Cats, it probably looks a little bit bleak in that situation for the Tiger Cats, but what do you think? What's your feeling for Friday's game? Do you think the Tiger Cats can overcome these injuries and play great like they have in the past at Tim Hortons Field?
Well, after the game ended on the injuries we realized after the game was ending, I thought, well, a little work to be done. Braylon Addison certainly stands out in your head as a huge, costly loss. But I thought, yeah, I mean, the Ticats aren't getting beat by these teams. And not to take anything away from Toronto, they made their plays and they kept the ball in their hands in the second half when they needed to, and they made huge plays, special teams and defense. Not to take anything away from them, but the Ticats' mistakes are too much. And so that's a good place to be in, meaning you can fix that. If you're just not a good football team and you're getting beat by teams, and I've been a part of that as well, where it's not even, we make mistakes, but there's other teams, they're just making so many plays that we're not. And that's just not the way the Ticats have lost games this year. So mistakes are identifiable. You can work on that during the week. But then the latest injury, the Dane Evans, that does throw a new wrench in it, and it's something that we don't know about and we weren't really totally expecting. And so that'll be a big challenge to overcome. Like I said, I think that the Ticats are lucky to have a guy like Matt Shiltz, in there as the second string. There's been plenty of years where that quarterback goes down, it is the next man's up, first snap in the CFL. And that's a tough, that's a tough thing to, that's kind of eye opening when you look in the huddle and you're like, how are you here right now? But Matt Schultz is certainly a vet, and we'll see how they handle that. But it's like all season, RJ, it comes down to, you don't have to. Nobody has to do anything spectacular. It's just about executing the job just a little bit better, and not perfectly. You try. It doesn't take a perfect game though for this team to win. It just takes a little bit better execution. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's really well put, Luke. And I've talked to a couple of Ticats fans, and they seem a little crestfallen about the injuries and the loss to the Argos. Yeah. But my gut tells me the Tiger Cats defense is going to be huge. And in a way, these injuries maybe take some pressure off. Tiger Cats need wins, so there's a ton of pressure. But if it is just a straightforward game plan on offense, move the ball, Matthew Schultz, we've seen Dane's a good runner, but Schultz really has elite speed. So it does add that other dynamic that the Argos defense has to maybe watch for a little bit more. I kind of have a good feeling about this game, despite a lot of the things going against the Tiger Cats going in.
Yep, and you're back in Tim Hortons Field. It's a home game. The Ticats can get back in their rhythm, as they do at home. And how about this, RJ? The last 4 games have been won by the Argonauts, regular season only.
Regular season, yeah.
Regular season. And before that, there were 7 straight victories by the Ticats. Like, they go in spells. And so if they could flip the script now, maybe that last 2 in 3 weeks from now, maybe they're set up to go the Ticats' way.
Yeah. And really, last season series, it came down to the important game was the one the Tiger Cats won. Right. But they've dug themselves a bit of a hole here. However, they're still tied for second in the CFL's East Division, and a win against Toronto all of a sudden has them right behind them again. So it's, we talk about a lot of struggles, but the fact remains the Tiger Cats are still in the thick of things, and things can be really positive despite a 2-6 start.
Yep, it's amazing stuff, and you got to believe, as a player, you gotta. That's the reality of the East, and it's yours to take. I think this is a team that you can easily, identify the things that you've done to yourselves and the times where other teams have played great. And there's a lot of times where it's just things the mistakes you made. And so what a week. No better time to correct it than at home versus Toronto.
That's right. And Matthew Schultz will be the starting quarterback for the Tiger Cats. It's his team. He knows that going in. It'll be fascinating to see how he plays, how the Tiger Cats play. It's another important game. Luke, can't wait to see you on Friday night at Tim Hortons Field. This will be a fun one to call.
Good stuff, RJ. I'll see you there.
So that's it for Ticats this week. Again, we appreciate you tuning into the Ticats Audio Network, getting you set up for another big battle of the rivals, the Tiger Cats and the Argos. Kickoff is at 7:30 from Tim Hortons Field. We will have the call for you on the Ticats Audio Network.
It's been another busy week for your Hamilton Tiger Cats. Luke Tasker and RJ Broadhead have covered it all, and now we would like to hear from you. Email us anytime at gameday@ticats.ca. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.